The Heat won. I am so excited about this. If you guys don't know, and if you guys are not aware, yesterday the Heat won, and I want to talk about it. Yesterday we had two games. The first game was the Miami Heat versus the Boston Celtics, and the second was the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Pelicans. The Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Pelicans. I know that I just spoke about the Heat, but I really want to speak about this game first. It was a good game, and both teams actually shot better this game. But I think that now the Thunder have figured out the playoffs, and I don't think that they're losing another game in this series. I believe the first game was a tone setter, and especially now that they were playing in OKC, it seems like now the young guys have changed their mentality and been able to come off as better in the playoffs. Their starting lineup all had a plus 24 or better plus minus, which means that when individually each player in their starting lineup was on the floor, they were winning against the Pelicans by 24 points or more. And this was highlighted by the fact that each player in their starting lineup scored over 10 points. They shot 48% from three and 59% from the field. And this was like the game for OKC. I think that their coach, made the necessary adjustments and really put them in a position to win, because honestly, when we see this game, we could see that the Pelicans just did not look the same as they did in that first matchup. I believe the reason why is mostly because of now pace. The Pelicans are a team which play at a very particular pace when Zion is not around. And in this game, the OKC Thunder just managed to just make a lot of shots and treat this more like a regular season game. They got to share it. They got to make quick moves. Chet was actually rebounding because of an adjustment that was made to put a guard on Chet consistently on the defensive end by the OKC Thunder. And honestly, I believe that the biggest problem this game was the fact that they weren't using the defense that the Pelicans have available to try to stop the correct people. The reason why I say that is because like Jonas Valanciunas was a lot of times switched on to guys like Lou Dort when Chet was on the floor, and CJ McCollum was getting Chet most of the time. The reason why is because they took Chet out of the paint, and what they did with him was that they were able to put him in a situation where Chet could be out in the three-point line, and since you cannot have Jonas Valanciunas being that far away, especially when you want him to be that good and when you want him to rebound for you, it basically made it so that CJ McCollum had to switch on to Chet Holmgren for most of the game. Apart from this, we saw Brandon Ingram switch on to Chet, and we saw a bunch of guys which were not Valanciunas guard Chet, and this caused him to have a great game. He had 26 points, 2 blocks, 7 rebounds with 1 assist, and even though he was great, Jalen Williams was another one who was great, but he's already found out how to abuse the smaller wings of this game, and his three-point shooting was pretty good considering the fact that he didn't take many shots. But the real star of this game was Chet. In the side of the Pelicans, they still haven't gotten their efficiency 100% straight, and the real problem is that Brandon Ingram just won't step up. Like, he played great, but he needs to take more shots and take more control of the game which he is playing. But for the Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went absolutely ballistic. He made 60% of his threes, made like 70% of his field goals, had 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 33 points, and all in all, he managed to actually put himself in a position where he could really change the course of this game and change the pace to which this game was being played. If we're being honest, this game was honestly more of just OKC really testing out how good they are, how lenient can they be in the playoffs, and it was really just testing, are the Pelicans going to allow us to play the style of play that we wanted to play? Because if you see the first two games, the Pelicans scored the same amount of points in both games. So it's not like there were many differences. The biggest difference was the defense and the switches which OKC abused, and those intricacies paid a big dividend for OKC. Now let's talk about the game which I introduced this video with, which is this Boston and Heat game. The Miami Heat played great this game. Their biggest attribute was their three-point shooting, as they made 23 threes and shot better from the three-point line than they did from the field goal. The biggest star of this game was Tyler Herro, which made 6 threes, dished out 14 assists, and played actually great defense when he was guarding players. I also believe that since most of the Heat roster is young, there was a kind of a similar effect that happened in this game and in the OKC game, where you saw that in this game, the Heat players, especially the young guys, were much more comfortable now showing out and really being themselves on the floor. We could see this with Jaime Jaquez, which scored 3 threes, and one of them was one of the threes that helped seal the game. Nikola Jovic scored 11 points on extreme, efficiency, and we could see that the team was mostly centered on sharing the basketball and playing great defense. On the Celtics side, the biggest problem was that they were played well, but I think that their stars were taking over too much the flow of the game. The reason why is because the Heat were playing more of a team-friendly style of basketball. They were making a lot of passes. They were not allowing players to be open without getting a look. And they had really this trust to them, which was something that you could really appreciate. And on the other hand, Boston, even though Jaylen Brown managed to score 33 points on good efficiency and get 8 rebounds, the problem was that it did not feel like they were really a team. At the start they came out swinging, they were playing really well, but when it came to produce good offensive sequences, especially in the last portion of the game, it did not seem like, outside of isolation shots and these turnaround jump shots and stuff like that, it did not seem like they really had something coherent going on. I will say that shout out to Eric Spoelstra. He took everything that he learned from the first game and how to guard, the players, and actually used it for the second game, which I really respect, if we're being honest. Like, using the knowledge to really abuse switches, knowing that Boston is going to leave an open three-point shooter mostly at all times, so putting a 5-out type of roster, except Bam. They did like a 4-out, 1-in, running that motion offense with a lot of screens and making sure to pull Kristaps Porzingis out of the paint most of the time by keeping Duncan Robinson in there. And the fact that they put Jaime Jaquez as the main forward for most of the game, while making it so that Al Horford has to come out and guard the perimeter, is really what opened up their three-point shot this much. Now, I know that these are intricacies and that these are things that a lot of people are not going to see, but with Boston and the way that their roster is set up, they have a lot of forwards, they have a lot of wings, they have a lot of players which play mostly, a bigger position. They have Al Horford, Kristaps, Sam Hauser, they have Tatum, and they have Brown, which can all switch on to bigger positions, and that causes that the Heat play the smaller ball lineup with Bam in the middles as a rebounder, and as the consistency of it, it made it so that when they do all these switches, all these screens, all these even ghost screens and cuts and stuff like that, that they were able to honestly see the potential in all of their players. I do want to say shout out to Hayward Highsmith on the bench. And shout out to Tyler Herro because he was really the proponent of this. He was the one making the first pass always. He was always the one initiating the offense. And when it came the moment to really put the game into play and make sure that everybody got a touch of the ball and that everybody got a pass and that everybody was in the right position, Tyler Herro basically took over this game. And it made the Heat win, especially in the fourth quarter when he made those few key passes to win in the game, and then he hit all of his free throws.